Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another great episode of the Cash Compound Podcast. I'm JDew, one of the banking bros, and today we have a very special guest coming all the way from Wisconsin. Ladies and gentlemen, now is it Wisconsin or Wisconsin, Craig? Wisconsin. Okay, very good. Well, we appreciate you being here, my friend, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself and how you kind of heard about us because, full disclosure, ladies and gentlemen, this was a great conversation and a new friendship relationship we just started, but actually, Craig is not actually working with us. He called in with some questions about some actual contracts that he already had from listening to our information. So, Craig, thanks for being here on for our podcast. Would love for you to introduce yourself and give us your background and how you found us at the Banking Bros.
Yeah, my pleasure. I was just informed about some whole life insurance policies from some different people. Started doing some research on YouTube and just looking. And then, of course, the algorithm took over when I was on TikTok and I found the Banking Bros live. So I thought, well, this is perfect. And you had the 3 cups set out. So I thought, okay, I'm so confused by all this, but maybe this guy can enlighten me because the way you were breaking it down, I thought maybe if anybody could teach me, maybe these guys, because they have it so structured. And I used to teach high school mathematics. So I just thought the whole idea of it, I should be able to comprehend this stuff. And the way you laid it out is kind of like what I like to do when I teach mathematics, try to think of a different way, a visual way, to help people.
Right.
So I really caught on to that live. And then you were answering questions on the live. So I'm in such a unique position where I own a franchise and the franchise has this $30,000 that they're willing to give me half of that $30,000 if I'll invest it into something. And there's these little requirements though. But one of the things is insurance. So I thought, I've always heard whole life insurance isn't like totally throwing your money away. It's kind of an investment sort of. So maybe this will count. And sure enough, since it's got the name insurance in it, I got it a franchise and said, yeah, you could do that if you want. So I got with a couple of guys and they set me up from Mass Mutual with a whole life insurance policy where my franchise pays half of it. All those premiums I'm paying, I pay semi-annual. They'll actually pay half of it for me.
Okay, very good. So here's the thing. Let's back up a few, Craig. So when you were growing up, probably like myself, now I took high school math, never taught it, but I took it. I think we all did here, maybe. So I slept through some of it. I would leave high school math, and the only things I could remember were the things that I wrote down in the book or whatever. Because once my math teacher stopped talking, I was like lost, right? As long as I was there in class, I could remember what was going on and step by step. But let's go back to that time. So you've lived a majority of your life at this point, not understanding all the nuts and bolts and pieces about life insurance and whole life insurance, I'm sure. So what had you heard? And of course, there's other types of insurance, and you may be carrying things like term insurance, for instance. So what had you heard about this product or term insurance or other types? And, what was your background with what is life insurance even for? What can be done?
Right. Well, I really didn't even care about it whatsoever, life insurance, until we had our son, our wife and I, and then you start thinking about, okay, I have a great job. I'm teaching high school math and she's got a managerial job. So we're fine, but we're still like just early in our careers. And now we have a son. It's like, man, what if something did happen to one of us? Here we have to raise our son alone for the rest of our life and just the grief and everything. It'd be nice to not have to worry about work anymore. At least you could focus on your life and your son. Right. So that's what I knew, started doing some research about term life insurance. So I got into that, I got a little bit of it, enough to make it so we don't have to worry about work really, really bad if something were to happen. But then I was just looking at my policy and, all that money just goes away. It's like paying for rent when you're renting an apartment. It just disappears. So it's like I realized that, but just that security, that good feeling. But then I realized also it's a little bit of a trick where if you're not careful, that $200 a year we're paying for the term life insurance jumps to $2,600 in the 10th year because, of course, you're getting older, so they know you're likely to die, so they're not wanting to take the risk on you anymore. So that's what I know about term life insurance, but I still think it's a great situation, a great deal for my situation for those 9 years to not have to worry if something were to happen to one of us. But then as far as whole life insurance, all I had ever heard was whole life insurance is really all about the fees, and the people who sell you whole life insurance are just out there. They're like sharks in the water, and they're just looking to make these huge fees, and it's just really, really a bad deal. So that's all I really knew about, had heard about whole life insurance until I did some more research.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I think that's how most of us kind of understand this, basically on a socioeconomic level of, that middle class, right? The middle class American. And it's interesting that the richest people in our country for the last 200 years actually are overwhelmingly using the permanent stuff as opposed to the term stuff. So the wealthier you are, the more likely it is you use and or understand what whole life insurance can do. You mentioned, Craig, for a second in there that you started to realize that in term life insurance, the cost of the insurance rises. But you've obviously noticed, I think, with what you have set up, that the insurance cost is level and doesn't go up on you in premium throughout your life. But there's so many people, Craig. How would you answer this, or how have you been answering this? I know you still have questions about what's going on, but how would you answer when folks say, well, it's only, let's say, $200, and you mentioned this $30,000 premium? There's obviously a big gap there, Craig. So when people give you this idea of, well, I mean, whole life insurance is so expensive, though. Well, what is your take on that now, or what
Oh
did
yeah,
you used to
now I
say to that?
like because it's all based on me, right? Like, so if I want to, like, we decided to go 10 years. We decided to go 10 years, and we decided on $30,000 for the franchise. I don't own what it's bringing, but
Yes.
I could have gone 20 years if I, let's say, I didn't own the franchise. I was just all on my own. I would go maybe 20 years, go $200 a month. That's what I'm paying for Netflix and Hulu and all this other junk combined. Well, I just make it like, instead of putting into this, make little tiny sacrifices, and just go $200 a month, let's say, for 12 months, and then let's do that for 20 years. If I could go back and be in my 20s, I could totally afford. Most people can afford that, a couple $100s. What's so beautiful about that is you set your own price, and you also set how often you want to pay. Because my policy is quarterly, monthly, annually, or semi-annually. So
Yep.
that's beautiful
Right.
about it too. Is I can just set how I want to pay it, and I can set how much per month, and it never goes up. And it's just like any kind of fixed cost. It's like the utility bill, $189 a month. It is what it is.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting about this, though, is you mentioned renting, and that's a great analogy. When you're renting something like term life insurance, you have the insurance, the portion of the death benefit, what you bought. You're renting that throughout the term. But in whole life insurance, and this is where our conversation came to a head, you called me and said, hey, I've got this policy that we're co going in with our franchise at the same time. We're going with it for 10 years, but I still have it for our whole life after that. I believe it's actually written on your wife, but you keep it, right? So, what happens to those numbers? You and I had a conversation. You called me up. What did you notice about those
Oh yeah,
numbers after you stopped paying
yeah,
for it?
yeah, exactly. So then the real light bulb came on. Is okay. The 10th year, I put that final $30,000, which 15's coming from me, 15 from my franchise. I put that in, and I have this net. I forget what it's called. That dollar amount that is mine, basically. But now
Cash
cash
value.
value, that cash value is this
Yeah.
giant amount, and it's so sweet. The 10 years is over. Okay. Still own the franchise or whatever I'm doing with my life. Who knows? Doing something else. Doesn't matter. But then that 11th year, that cash value actually jumps up a significant amount, like eight, nine, $10,000. But yet I'm not putting a
Right.
penny in that year. Not a penny. And then the next year, the 12th year, let's call it, there's another nine, 10,000 getting lumped on top of that. And again, I'm contributing zero. So it's such a beautiful thing. Not only is my premiums are not jumping up like term life insurance, my premiums are now gone. They decreased by negative $30,000. So now I'm putting in $0 a year, but yet it's jumping and jumping and jumping. And I used to think, well, that's somebody else's money. But then after talking to you on the phone, I realized, no, that's my money. I can use it whenever I want for whatever I want. Like you said, I could take a loan on against that. I could borrow against that $270,000 for, want to go buy a Lamborghini, want to send my kid to college, whatever. And because that's my money, but it's growing every single year while putting in zero.
Well, Craig, this is what the people really want to know. You mentioned two choices which are vastly different. What is it going to be? You have to decide right now. Are you buying a Lamborghini? Or you sending your son to college? What's it going to be?
Probably in all reality, neither.
Okay, right. But see, the beautiful thing is that it's flexible. This cash value, once again, like you said, is yours to be able to use. And this policy is a contract guaranteed by the company you mentioned. It's not an investment. the numbers are guaranteed to do this, and you can always borrow against them. So most people out there assume, and they hear things from those financial entertainers potentially out on the airwaves and the television stations, that, oh, whole life is a bad investment. But I have to challenge that thought. What is your thought on this, Craig? That, hold on, if whole life insurance is guaranteed and there's cash to use from it, that can become cash flow, liquid. It's not an investment at all. What do you say to that?
Yeah, well, I say to that, there was, I was just like everybody else, listened to that and wrote
Yeah.
it off. But you got to do your own studying, right? Like you're out for yourself. You got to be out for yourself. So look, they're saying that for a reason, right? Everybody's saying stuff for a reason. So you have to look at what's best for you. And when I look at it, it's such a no-brainer because those that's money that I could use do whatever I want to do with. And I also came across another podcaster or YouTube guy who was talking about buying shares of Apple. You go buy shares of Apple, and let's say you want
Okay.
$10,000 buy Apple. There's three ways to do that. Use cash, which is kind of a pain to do because you got to go to work and save and save and save. Finally, you have your $10,000 buy Apple stock. Or you could take a loan, okay, go get a home equity loan or get some kind of loan, do that. Or you could actually set up what we're talking about right now, a whole life insurance policy, and you could put these, premiums in there, and then you get the $10,000 that way. And he did all the math, and let's say Apple grows over 10 years, 3% or 10%, whatever. But he did the math
Okay.
and all that. And, numbers don't lie. That's why I love mathematics, and I was a math teacher. Numbers don't lie. So he did all three scenarios, and it was really cool. The whole life insurance, and he didn't even like talk about taxes and stuff, which makes it even better. And the whole life insurance crushes those other two options. It's not even close. And I can kind of comprehend that because he had tables and stuff like that. So then now that I look at it that way, it's such a beautiful thing because you're borrowing this against you're loaning against your policy, but you're not like losing the money whatsoever. That just stays in there. And I haven't even brought up the fact that that policy I told you about, the whole life insurance policy, it's guaranteed, like you just said. But what they don't tell you, well, they do tell you, but you got to read the fine print, is that there's dividends too. And it says we've been paying a dividend for 84 consecutive years, but that's not guaranteed. But they've been paying it for 84 years. Sure enough, I looked at my policy the other day. I got $1,016 of a dividend. I'm not even counting on that. I'm just counting that money I'm putting in, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
guaranteed that I love, that's guaranteed. Well, that guaranteed is probably false because you know what? The guarantee is probably false because it's going to be higher actually because the dividend. Unless they stop paying dividends,
Right.
which they say they can, but they've done it for 84 years in a row. And sure enough, I already got one.
Right, right. Man, it's a magical thing what you're saying, Craig, because so many folks want to get on to folks like me and say, hey, you're one of those guys that's only trying to, I don't know, coerce or long form explain people into buying products that they don't need. But you're understanding that you can use it. It's not something that you don't need. You always need money. Cash flow is king. And that's what you have here. And on top of the guarantees, you're right, there are dividends. So most mutual companies that we use are over 100 years old, just like the company you mentioned. We do deals with them as well. And many of those companies have been paying for almost just as long as they've been in business those dividends year after year. Spanish American War, Civil War, Obama, Yo Mama, depreciation, inflation, and every other thing. They're actually giving these bonuses. And those dollars, another gem that you dropped for us, those cash value dollars that all of the premiums and the dividends become are actually tax free. Now, Craig, I don't know about how things are in Wisconsin. I am in South Carolina, but money that I can use, cash flow, that's income tax free, Uncle Sam can't get to, is even more valuable in our household than the other type of money. That's what I have to say about that. What do
Oh
you
yeah,
think?
that's for sure. And you know what? You get these situations in your life that you don't even know are going to happen. Like for example, there's a group of guys that I know that I really, really trust, and they know some their best friends and their work coworkers or whatever have the situation where they're going to get a land investment and they're going to get develop this land, and they're selling. I forget what it's called, but promissory note, or it's an investment situation,
Yeah, yeah.
and they say the minimum though was $50,000. So like, oh, well, normally I look at my liquid in my bank right now. I have this, these CDs, or I have some Apple stock or whatever I have, and I don't want to pull it out of it, but I don't want to pass up on this chance, right? I mean, it's a great chance. I trust these guys, and their goal is like 8 to 10% return from this investment.
Yeah.
I know these guys are
Right.
good, but so what do I do? What I can do is, it just dawned on me, I could borrow, against, how do they say you could borrow against, right? Instead of trying to sell my Apple stock, which I don't want to sell right now for the price that it's at right now, and all this, I don't want to do any of that. Well, why not just take some of this borrow against this whole life policy and say, yes, I'm
Yep.
in on this $50,000 or seven. It's in 50,000 minimum, or going up from there. So that's the beauty of having the whole life available. Like you say, cash flow is king, right? If I go and take it out
Yeah.
of certain, plus if I take it out of Apple stock right now, I'm taking a loss, let's say, or if I take it out of,
Right.
anywhere else.
And, and obviously, if you take out some sort of investment opportunity, you've taken out principal. If the stock goes up, which is what the investment is for, right? We only put dollars in so we can go up in value on those dollars to create cash flow for us later, right? That's the whole point. Like, we want to have cash flow eventually. Well, why wait if we can have both? Most people don't understand that a whole life insurance policy will be available for both. But if you pull principal out from your stocks, from your
Yeah.
CDs, you have taxable gains,
Yep.
and you now can't grow with it
Right.
anymore.
Exactly.
But yeah, you can't grow with it. I mean, that's so obvious, but it's so crazy that something as old and as archaic and as boring as whole life insurance actually is the perfect place to store and save your money,
Right. Right.
isn't it? So here's my question for you. Coming from the background that you came from, and how you may have grown up or even treated money as a family, being a married man and a father, when you sat down with a couple of folks and they tried to present this with you, what knowledge had you already had? Did you say you'd already been learning or had heard podcasts or read books, or how did you receive the information that, hey, whole life, why don't we set you up like this? I mean, did you think you were going to hell if you actually bought
Oh,
into it,
no, but
or what was your thought?
being a mathematician, I had to go with the premise that at the time that this was all going on with my franchise and everything, I had so much going on, so many irons in the fire, right? So these guys were smooth talking me, talking real fast about whole life insurance. And be very honest with you, I heard nothing good about whole life insurance up to that point in my life. But then I thought I was smart enough mathematically to know, if the company, if this is like a $30,000 investment, okay, I kind of own it actually, and I only have to pay 15,000 of it. So since I only pay, I thought, if I'm getting totally ripped off right now, let's say I really am I really getting ripped off 50% worth, So I kind of just went with the flow, because I'm thinking, let's say the fees are high and all this bad stuff you hear about. Well, it's $30,000. I'm only paying 15, so it can't really be getting ripped off. Now
Right.
that I have time in the franchise, a little more settled down here after 6 years, and I've had this policy for, this was about 3 years ago. So now that things are settled down, and and some of my workers at the franchise are actually looking into it and talking to me about, hey, you hear about whole life, blah, 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 infinite banking. Like, oh yeah, I actually think I have a policy like that. So I
Right.
have
Right.
one that's 10-year, but so now I'm able to do a little more research and figure out how to utilize it, and
Right.
everything about it. And now it's getting exciting, especially now that I realize the company's paying half of it for me. It's super exciting.
It's amazing when you mention that the company is contributing to your ability to have cash flow to maybe get in on this land idea or some other investment with your buddies. Because there's no way on an illustration, so many agents out there, so many people out there only try to look at the paperwork. But there is no way to quantify on paperwork the opportunities that come with cash.
Well, right.
See, the person who has cash can go get involved in whatever their family and friends are doing.
Yeah.
They can go spend that money on whatever opportunities come up or emergencies. This is a liquid account, and there's no way to quantify that opportunity if you don't have
Right.
it because your money's
Yeah,
locked up
which is
elsewhere.
almost, you hear the
So,
phrase, the rich get
yeah,
richer, right? The rich get richer. Why is that? Because of knowledge. Like Disney. Why is that guy, Walt Disney, is so rich? Well, he knew this, right? He did this. That's what they say, that he used whole life insurance. But it's sad that, that's why
right.
I'm shocked some of my managers who are middle class right now and going to move up, but they found out about this, right? And they're doing this research, and they're 21 years old. So with this whole life insurance, maybe we can break the mold, like the rich get richer. Instead of that, well, if the middle class can kind of learn about this and not keep
Right.
giving their money to Chase. Look at the Chase stock up every single day. Well, they can become their own Chase Bank, their own brand, and be their own banking system and utilize this. Then that's how you can get into the rich class, right? And then
That's
get
right.
richer. But the middle class can get richer utilizing things like this if they could just learn about it.
I love it. The corporate owned life insurance idea, COLI. We sometimes hear about BOLI, BOLI, bank owned life insurance, is such a, well, I think it's going to become more and more ubiquitous in the information age that we live in. You found us on TikTok and some other places where a lot of people this summer in 2022 have found us, is that they're realizing that if it's true, which you can obviously Google, that corporate organizations like yours and your corporate own company and your franchise model that you guys have and you guys work with, as well as banks like Chase, own this product.
Right.
They're telling you to save your money in their bank. Meanwhile, they take their money and they use it inside these tier one assets. Tier one assets, for all of you listening out there, are where banks have to keep money to make sure that they stay liquid. They say, and the solvent, right? They're putting their money in these areas where they are considered safe and growing and liquid because they obviously have to have cash reserves on hand. And they're putting it in these same types of companies, mutual companies that sell whole life insurance, buying it on employees, on officers, on vice presidents, and they're utilizing this as a safe place to save their money, not for their investment opportunities, but where they can keep their cash on hand. It's a beautiful thing. And what I wanted to make sure that our folks at home kind of understood, Craig, for a second was there's a lot of people out there like yourself who have businesses. They're middle class people like you and I. They didn't grow up knowing all of these tricks of the trade. And they can also utilize this with their employees, with their officers, with themselves, and stay liquid, save their money while it continues to compound and grow. So I'm sure that opened up your eyes a little bit to how the world is really working and where people actually save their money who really have it.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. When I watch your videos, finally when it dawned on me how it all works. When you talked about the bank does this and what do? They get this return. Just that whole video really helped me out a lot. And so I'm thinking maybe in people's defense, that's why they're not getting this, not looking into it, because it's too confusing for them or they're too confused.
Oh,
Because
no.
it is hard to wrap your brain around. But once you get it, you get it. And then you realize, that that's the way to go.
All right, at that juncture, ladies and gentlemen, our friend Craig had some technical difficulties, as happens, but he did mention our presentation where he got this information. So we appreciate you following along to the Cash Compound journey. Appreciate Craig so much, who's not actually a client with us, but called us on that free consultation line and said, hey, I have some questions about the paperwork that I do own because I watched your presentation. I would love if you could break this down and explain it to me, which we did. It turned out to be a wonderful conversation. And he realized, man, what I have is powerful and I should keep it. It's always going to go and grow and be cash flow for my family. So we hope that same thing for you. Reach out to us. We've got links everywhere to get on our calendars for a conversation with one of the banking bros. We will talk to you all soon.